¿Os creéis el capitalismo de impacto? Antes os he dicho que haríamos un viaje. Después de estas 2 mesas redondas, ¿pensáis que el capitalismo de impacto es una cosa que va a llegar? ¿Pensáis que las empresas van a integrar el impacto social y medioambiental en sus actividades? ¿Pensáis que va a haber una nueva contabilidad? ¿Pensáis que va a haber unos nuevos estándares internacionales? ¿Pensáis que los CEOs en el futuro van a pensar en clave de triple impacto social, del triple bottom line? Para todo ello, hoy es un auténtico honor y estamos muy agradecidos de tener a Sir Ronald Cohen y a José María Álvarez Pallete y a Gonzalo Gortázar en la mesa estrella del día de hoy. Hace 8 años, cuando fundamos S2B con Clara y con Maite, veíamos vídeos de Sir Ronald Cohen de todo lo que estaba pasando en el Reino Unido. Y soñábamos y pensábamos, ojalá que esto pronto llegue a nuestro país. Y fue muy inspirador para nosotros en nuestros inicios a contar con las palabras de Sir Ronald Cohen. El año pasado tuvimos a la mamá del movimiento, a Michelle Giddens, que es la socia de Ronald Cohen en Bridges Ventures. Este año tenemos al papá y tenemos a Sir Ronald Cohen y tenemos a 2 de los CEOs más referentes, más innovadores y que están concibiendo el futuro de una manera más inteligente en nuestro país, José María Álvarez Pallete y Gonzalo Gortázar. Sin más, os introduzco, moderará la sesión María Herrero. Adelante, María, tienes la palabra.
Gracias, Xavi, y empezamos esta gran sesión. Good afternoon, everybody, to the 4th edition of the Impact Forum. We have made this session towards a new capitalism 2.0. It is a great honor for me to introduce our speakers today. Sir Ronald Cohen, Chairman of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, José María Álvarez Pallete, Chairman and CEO of Telefónica, and Gonzalo Gortázar, CEO of CaixaBank. Welcome and thank you very much for being with us today. So, leading capitalists all around the world admit that capitalism is broken. Sir Ronald, in your latest and very inspiring book, Impact, and on your recent interview on US TV, you said that the era of capitalism is over. How do we reshape capitalism to drive prosperity and growth for all?
Thank you, Maria. It's a great honor to share this platform with 2 great leaders of finance and business, Gonzalo and Jose Maria, and of course with you, and please call me Ronnie. What I believe, Maria, is that the era of just making money without worrying about the consequences that you create on people and planet, that era is over. The reason it's over is we already see more than $30 trillion going in ESG and in impact investment to companies that can deliver more than just profit, that can deliver improvement in lives and the planet, impact, as we call it, as well as profit. And these flows of capital are already affecting the values of companies. The effort which I'm privileged to chair at Harvard Business School, the Impact Weighted Accounts Initiative, has published the impacts in monetary terms, the environmental impacts of 1,800 companies. And when you look at these companies, you see several things. The first thing you see, Maria, is together they deliver $3 trillion worth of environmental damage in a single year. $3 trillion. You see 250 of them deliver more environmental damage than they deliver profit in a year. And more than 600 of them deliver environmental damage equivalent to more than a quarter of their profit. And the last thing that you see, and I'll stop there, is you see a correlation now between companies that pollute more and lower market valuations relative to their competitors. For me, that's the signal that the era of just making money without worrying about damage is over.
Thank you, Ronnie. Gonzalo, do you agree with Sir Ronald's view and the new paradigm of going beyond profits, that now it's risk return, but also embedding impact to drive business and financial decisions?
Absolutely, I do. I think it's a must. When you were asking whether capitalism is broken, and following Ronnie's answer, I remember when I studied history, you remember when capitalism was born, we had tremendous negative side effects, child labor, or very long working hours, or no holidays, sort of protection of workers. And that has been largely regulated. It was clearly something that would not have allowed capitalism to continue. And in fact, we had tremendous social disruption during history in the 19th century, precisely after that. Now we've got to a point where, I mean, putting in as a financial, as a former CFO, we have capitalism as a great way to allocate money and to allocate also human effort. So you create companies and you put people and money and you do certain things. And you do those things for the good of shareholders, and hopefully also for employees and clients. Now, when you add the balance sheets and P&Ls of all these corporations in the world, you don't get to something that optimizes the world, because there's many assets that are not in any single balance sheet or P&L. And Ronnie was mentioning sort of issues around climate change, natural resources, all these is not being managed. Who is allocating these resources, which we know are finite in our world? When they were seemingly completely abundant, this was not an issue. Now this is clearly becoming to an end. So either we change into another dimension, and this dimension is impact, and what is really, I would say, fantastic is that now we're getting to a way to measure impact. We need to incorporate it into our decisions, otherwise we will never get to optimize what we're doing, because we're just not having into account something that is absolutely critical. So I see this as a must, as something that is unfortunately already coming. It's also something that is quite complex to measure impact, so we're going to have to work quite a lot on it. But there's only one direction, and if we don't move along this dimension, certainly I think the capitalism would have very serious problems, existential issues.
Jose Maria, in the light of what Gonzalo has just said and what Sir Ronald has said in numbers, amazing $3 trillion in environmental damage in a single year, but also talking about social impact. In the light of the mission of Telefónica, where you say that you want to make more human world by connecting people's lives, can you share with us how Telefónica transforms lives? How does it do it through impact and technology?
Certainly. And first of all, let me say that I'm really honored to be here with Gonzalo and with Ronnie and with yourself. The first thing that we need to acknowledge is that everything that Gonzalo and Ronnie have said needs to be framework in the biggest and deepest technological revolution that the human history has ever known. So we are living a massive disruption effort coming from artificial intelligence, virtual reality, deep learning algorithms, quantum computing, a lot of our technology accumulating at the same time. And this is creating a boost in data and in information. So if we do nothing, this massive technology revolution is going to be impacting everything. So we need to be aware that it is all around values, that we need to make sure that this technological revolution is somehow framework in values. Gonzalo was mentioning the previous industrial revolution and how it was needed to be framework in some values. For us, it's the same. And the first thing that we need to acknowledge is the role that we play ourselves. In the case of Telefónica, this technological revolution flows through our networks. And we see data volumes growing 40 to 50 to 60% year on year, massive increase of data. And therefore, if we do nothing, connectivity would create inequality. So our first mission is to connect people, because the way for this to happen and for to be good for everybody is that the connectivity is available for everybody. So massive deployment of connectivity is essential. But then going beyond that, I mean, you need to make sure that you fulfill your role. If we analyze the pandemic that we are in the middle of, I mean, imagine the pandemic without connectivity. It would be like the previous pandemic in 1918. I mean, we'll be at home, but the life will be paralyzed. So my question here, or my point here, is that this is not just about, you know, an evolution of the capitalist system. It's deeper than that. It's a technological revolution that is going to change everything, and in which there are some values that we need to make sure that we honored. And in the case of Telefónica, we need to honor our mission statement. We want to make our world more human by connecting lives. And that helps us to understand what is our role in this moment.
You're right, Jose Maria. You talk yourself and Gonzalo and Ronald about values. We are already seeing all across the globe that consumers, your employees, investors, they're already shifting from negative impact companies to positive impact ones. And therefore, Gonzalo, my question to you is, do you think impact investment, delivering both social and financial returns, will become the new normal? That not before long, all investments will be ESG and impact driven?
Well, we are certainly moving in that direction. There's no question. Maria, I remember when I joined Caixa Group 11 years ago, and one of the first meetings I had was with the head of sustainability. We have one person that was actually doing it, and she asked me, Gonzalo, do you think this is really relevant for investors? And I said, honestly, not. This is a nice sort of tick in the box, and we have to do it, sounds okay, but nobody really invests in us because we're good citizens. That was my genuine right or wrong view 11 years ago. Now, around 3 years ago, I asked the head of one of the largest asset managers worldwide, and I said, listen, I think something is happening here. What's your view? And the view was, definitely, this is now, the time has come, this is real, ESG considerations, no? And the pace of change over the last few years has been tremendous. I think if we project this going forward, this is actually going to be the new investment normal. I think we want to be not just looking at ESG considerations and sort of responsible investment, which we, I think, all need to and love to do, and we're learning a lot, I think, year after year, how to actually make it happen, no? But it's also going back to optimizing resources and capital, etc. Today, to some extent, we still have one model where we're trying to penalize bad citizens, and we say this is an investable universe, and we're going to exclude certain sectors or companies or bad players, etc. Which is, I think, important. Is a very good first step. You single out parts. But then I think in order to improve, we need to encourage people to be better citizens, and obviously it's not the same to be average than good, than very good, than extremely good, and hence is where we need to move from just a simple sort of ESG considerations. And maybe something, what I'm saying here, maybe not exactly technically accurate, but it's the way I see it. We need a measure that is much deeper, and that really incentivizes change. And this is where I think impact has a lot to play. I think this is not going to be overnight. It's complex because the key issue, this is sort of echoing Ronnie's words and in writing, is really to get to measure these things. I think it was Peter Drucker who said, something you cannot manage, something you cannot measure, you cannot manage. And this is so critical. And at the same time, it is so difficult. And today, corporations are explaining to investors and the public generally those things they do well. There's no way to compare. There's no way they will disclose what they do not that well. And in the end, you get a bit confused. So having some good measure and harmonize on which you're working is going to be critical to accelerate that process. But is this going to be the new investment normal? Certainly, I think it will be.
Wonderful, great news, Gonzalo, great news. So, Ronald, you cannot manage what you cannot measure, Gonzalo has said. Can you please explain to us the work that you have done? We've talked about impact-weighted accounts in the session before us, but can you actually answer to what Gonzalo is saying, that you cannot manage what you cannot measure, but how do we go on about it? How complex it is? Will financial impact accounts model be a solution to this?
Well, it certainly is absolutely essential to doing it, Maria. If you look at the environmental data set at Harvard, you will see the different environmental types of damage that are caused by companies. Companies are going to have to invest in order to reduce that damage. To the extent that they are aware that their impact-weighted earnings per share are going to determine the value of their company on the stock market, they're going to work on the impact. As Gonzalo was saying, they're going to have an incentive to improve their impact performance in order to improve the value of their company, because that is where the investors are going, the talent is going, and the consumers are going. But if I can take an example in the social area, Maria, one of the biggest problems we face across the world, apart from the environmental challenge, is the challenge of inequality and lack of diversity and lack of opportunity. And if you look at the measurement of employment impact, you can actually break it down into equal pay according to gender. You can break it down into diversity relative to the diversity around the facilities of a company. So a company like Intel, which has a reputation for worrying about the well-being and the diversity of its workforce, sees its $7 billion annual wage bill to its US workforce cut by half in terms of positive employment impact, because of lack of diversity relative to the demographics around its facilities, differences in gender pay and other pay and benefits, and differences in advancement. Now, how do you measure that? You measure that because you take the numbers of people who are missing at each echelon of the organization, and you apply the remuneration they would have received. And that gives you a measure of the cost to their community of being excluded. Now, if you have that type of data on a comparable basis across the whole of the tech industry, you can see that you create a race to the top. And so you add to that the product impact, where we will soon be capable of pointing our telephone at the barcode on a product on the supermarket shelf and find out whether Associated British Foods, which manufactures Twinings tea, creates a positive or negative impact. In the case of Associated British Foods, the Harvard data shows it creates $1.8 billion of negative environmental impact against $1.6 billion of profit. And that's going to affect our consumer choices. And so Associated British Foods is going to have to move in the direction of improving its environmental footprint. So I totally agree with Gonzalo, and I don't think people have yet completely understood how far the technology to which Jose Maria has referred enables us today to achieve total transparency on the impacts created by companies and translate them into monetary terms that can be reflected in their regular financial accounts. Your profit and loss account will be alongside the profit and loss and impact account.
Absolutely. Jose Maria, in the telecommunications sector, how are you adapting to all that Ronnie and Gonzalo is saying, all the stakeholders' demands, consumers' choices, employees, diversification, gender, remuneration? Can you explain how do you measure, account, and report the impacts, so many positive impacts as well, that Telefónica is doing upon society and upon the resources of the planet?
Sure. Let me start by saying that what Gonzalo was stating before, it's really important. I mean, in terms of, this is not longer a nice to have thing. This is a must thing. And I'm saying that because we are in the corporates. I mean, in the case of Telefónica, we have 340 million customers worldwide. We employ 1.2 million people, directly or indirectly. We contribute 52 billion euros to the different GDPs, and we have a massive impact every day in every society. So the first thing to say is that, in my opinion, in our opinion at Telefónica, there is a first mover advantage because society is going into that direction. So my customers, our team, our people, our suppliers, our investors would like us to go into that direction because that's something that concerns them. So I think it's not a nice to have. It might be a competitive advantage because you are more aligned with society, and we are such a capillary company because we have massive B2C businesses that first you need to believe in it. But if you don't believe in it, from a pragmatical way, your company is worth more if you go into that direction. So it's irreversible in our personal point of view, and it's much more gratifying to work in a company that is going that direction because you're aligned with your customers, with your team, with your suppliers, with society, with investors. But now you need to go to the details, as Gonzalo was saying, to the KPIs, and then you need to stick to those KPIs: diversity, carbon emissions. I mean, values on your suppliers' value chain, these kind of things. And only when you incorporate those KPIs into the remuneration policy of the company, when you track those at the board of directors, when you track those the same way you track revenue increases or margin evolution, then it becomes trackable and it becomes executable. So it's first is a decision. It's a kind of a philosophical mission statement. You want your company to go into that direction, and you decide so, and it becomes a mission statement. You know, it's starting with a sentence. It's easier to transmit to 120,000 direct employees. We want to make our world more human by connecting lives, and then you start spreading the word and doing the KPIs. So it needs to be managed as you manage other KPIs. I need to put them on the same level, because that's the only way that the organization is going to see that it's really something that is going to happen, that we are all going to make it happen. I mean, so that's what it's helping us. As we speak, we have in Spain and in Brazil 100% of the energy totally renewable, based on renewable energies. You know, deploying a fiber network consumes 30% of the energy of a copper network. So when you start measuring those things, it accelerates your own performance of the traditional business because you feel that it's a purpose, it's a mission. I mean, so it's also creating, in the middle of the pandemic, we have reached our historical high employee net promoter score because we have become very relevant for society. So there are a lot of tangible and derived effects from this direction. So I think it's you know, we believe in it, but most of all, it's the way to go. It's the right decision.
And you're acting on it. You were sharing with us just before the session that those KPIs are directly linked to the bonuses and the remunerations of the top management in your company. So congratulations on that, because you are already, you know, doing the action. It looks to me on what the three of you are saying that this decade to come, it's going to be the most challenging, the most exciting, but also it can be dangerous as well as we get closer to that 2030 UN development agenda, that we all need to be there, as Paul Polman says, the decade of delivery, right? And as we get closer to the agenda, there's only 10 more years to go. New definitions like Jose Maria and Gonzalo were saying: impact, value, purpose, wealth creation, setting up a new order, a new way of doing business. Jose Maria, how has the combination of impact, value, purpose, in addition to COVID-19, has accelerated this change in the way you do business?
It's it's a really special time to talk about this. The pandemic is totally uncharted territory. I mean, none of us were prepared for the pandemic. And in fact, we need to analyze everything in the framework of this situation. Why am I saying that? Because what we see out of the pandemic is that digitalization has accelerated like 3 to 5 years. So all the trends that were happening before the pandemic has been accelerated. You know, we never prepared our network to have 100% of our customers working from home, their kids being educated from home or having entertainment from home, and it happened. And that's why this pandemic has been different. And it has accelerated other trends. And I'm saying that because at the end of the day, this is uncharted territory, not just the pandemic. This is a new technological revolution that is having a deeper impact than any other revolution before. So most of the things are not written yet. And I'm deeply convinced this is not just about technology. Technology is already here. We have already the technology here. This is about the values on which we want this technology to be framework. So for me, this is like Gonzalo was stating at the beginning with the industrial revolution around labor rights. We are assisting to the creation of a new production factor, which is data. And I think my data is like my dignity. It cannot be expropriated without a counterpart. So we need digital philosophers, we need digital lawyers, we need digital doctors, we need digital economists, we need, because this is about values. And around those values, and I'm sure that this impact methodology is going to be complemented by other features, other values that are going to be needed along the way. So my point here is that the pandemic has accelerated everything. And it's more and more important to framework each of our activity in a value scheme. And I think that on the business point of view, from the business point of view, reshaping capitalism means that there are other values that we need to put into the equation. We need to maximize value creation, but in the framework of, because we cannot let the technology to do whatever it can do. It would not be humanly acceptable. So my point is that this is not the impact is deeply needed because values are deeply needed. I mean, you cannot do whatever you want with technology.
Values, impact, long-term mission. Gonzalo, what about the banking and financial sector? What do you think the change will be there? How will Caixa contribute to integrate impact to its products and to its operations, as Ronald was also saying before?
Sure. Well, let me start by thanking Jose Maria and Telefónica for having a real impact during this lockdown, because it's been amazing how well things have worked out on the communications front. As a large customer of Telefónica, we're very pleased. And I have to say, based on my dialogues with other CEOs and banks in other regions of the world, it's not been like that everywhere. So all the investment that Telefónica has made in having the rails to provide this service and the effort is well known. From our side, I would say, and again, back on a personal anecdote, when I joined this group, I came from one large global investment bank. So the first thing I was named as CEO of a subsidiary that was listed. And precisely when I said sustainable was not that relevant. And I actually, in my official script, I was continuously emphasizing that we were a company trying to make money. Because we were part of a non-for-profit organization or a different organization without shareholders like Caixa Group. And that was kind of suspicious. Now, because we were born 115 years ago, and I think it's interesting because the founder wanted a financial institution that would help workers for work accidents. There was no social security, and also for long-term savings, also in terms of appropriate retirement supplement, etc. And that was the only reason for this bank to exist. And we wanted to make money. The founder wanted to make, and he made a lot of money. It was only reinvested in the business and then given back to society as in the form of welfare. These changed about 10 years ago, and then we separated the sort of non-for-profit, the foundation, from the bank, which is today listed, and it is owned by a foundation, largest in Spain, one of the largest worldwide. 550 million euros of budget on an annual basis that is given back to society. Sort of a large explanation to say this is our DNA. And again, this DNA, which is actually you can combine making money on a sustainable basis we're doing good on a sustainable basis. This was something I had to hide 10 years ago because it was kind of, oh, you cannot do this. And now I feel like the world has come back to say, hey, our model was not that wrong. It's actually now a reference. And we obviously need to improve along many dimensions, but we are with a feeling that we were in the right direction. And now what we have is the wind is blowing, it's tailwind, not headwinds we have. But back to what we're doing now as a bank, I would say we're changing or maintaining the way we relate with customers. Things like financial inclusion is very important for us. We operate in 2,000 towns in Spain. We will operate even on more after the merger with Bankia. We want to stay, even if sometimes that's not particularly profitable in certain locations. We think that has an impact, certainly a negative impact if you leave a town where there's no longer a financial institution that very usually senior people can interact with. Bankia has been doing a great number of things also on that front. We've been carbon neutral for 3 years after having decreased carbon emissions by 80% in the previous years. But as a bank, our impact is not so much what we do, but how do we fund and use our funds. No? So apart from looking at what we do, we're looking at how we fund ourselves. Just today we issue a green bond, €1 billion, great success. We've done a social bond earlier this year, social bond last year. Actually, funding for a financial institution is obviously a critical competitive advantage. And as long as the market continues to evolve towards providing funds in a more abundant way to the right type of institutions, this is going to have an impact. And we're starting to see that. It's just not, it's nice to have this bond, this is a normal bond, it's also green or social. We're seeing an impact on demand, which is quite relevant. Obviously, hopefully, an impact on price. Certainly what we did today went extremely well in terms of 5 times oversubscribed and a very good price. And then even more so than how we fund ourselves is how we use our money. No? We have 25 billion of equity. We have, so that's large, but on 25 billion of equity, we also have 160 billion of VIMs. We are the largest pension, life-saving asset manager in Spain, and then we have 240 billion of loans, no lending. All together, we're talking about 400 billion. With Bankia, will be 600 billion. Now think about 600 billion is half the GDP of Spain. Well, it's a lot. If we invest 600 billion in one way or in another, I think people will realize. And I'm telling my people, and my people tell me as well, listen, I want to go and retire, not just by be proud of having made money and having my clients happy, also having contributed something beyond to society. You know? And obviously financial institutions with our leverage, we can be certainly way of doing or taking excessive risk, and we've seen that 11 years ago. We're a great way of doing good things as well. No, it's possible. I promise. One further comment I would like to finish on this point is measuring this impact. We've done a lot in microbank. We own the largest microfinance institution in Europe, certainly in Spain. It's done now around 6 billion euros of lending through its 12-year history or 13-year history. We estimated to have measured 265,000 of new jobs created. Last year alone, 9,000 startups, thanks to microbank, and over 20,000 jobs. This is real impact, and now we are being able on a smaller scale to measure it. But it's actually quite relevant, and by the way, it's actually profitable as well. So again, doing the right thing does not mean not making the right amount of money. Sometimes, and certainly in the long term, it means doing both things in a better way. Now, what I would like to see is our ability to measure impact on 6 billion of lending taken to 600 billion. And not just our investments, where we manage for people, where we are quite advanced, and I've tried to put there the A+ for sustainability that we have from United Nations, we have had for a while, but also the way we lend money. And there's profound change taking place at CaixaBank and at financial institutions, particularly with an environmental sort of glass on because of what is happening on climate-related issues, etc. But this is a big, big change, and I certainly want to be and have CaixaBank leading this change. I think our history puts us in a place that we deserve it, but we'll continue working along that direction.
Very impressive indeed. I mean, these numbers are just incredible. 600 billion, half of Spanish GDP, 400 billion before, and 500 million La Caixa given to social issues is just outstanding. So, Ronald, it looks to me that we need the role, I mean, CEOs like Gonzalo and Jose Maria, we really need top management to believe on this. This is not about, you know, people on the basic levels. It is not about social responsibility anymore. This is about CEOs to taking decisions. Can you tell us what you think is the role of CEOs, just like Jose Maria and Gonzalo, in this new era of capitalism, in this new era of transparency, in this new era of making business for the good of all people?
Well, the first thing I would say, Jose Maria, is Maria, is Gonzalo and Jose Maria are not typical of business leaders. They are thought leaders. They have understood where the world is going. They're steering organizations whose values are consistent with that. The average CEO believes in optimizing risk return, has not realized yet that actually optimizing risk return impact will deliver better investment returns for a business or for an investor than just optimizing risk return because of the change in values and norms. If you invest in a business and you lead the business as a CEO, which is funded by investors, which has a bad environmental record, and a bad social record, it's going to be liable to regulation and taxation. The impact transparency that is coming now is going to enable governments to tax companies directly for the damage they cause. In addition to that, talent consumers are going to leave them, and that's why investors will leave them in droves. So what we see today is the confluence of the technology that Jose Maria referred to and this changing of values in the direction of doing good and doing well at the same time, to put it simply, is going to lead to a slew of companies like Tesla that come in with disruptive models that optimize risk-return impact and take advantage of the increased demand for their products and the talent that wants to join them. So the average CEO will wake up to this because, like the shareholders of the Procter & Gamble meeting, shareholders are going to vote against management in the case of Procter & Gamble for deforestation that their use of palm oil causes. And the availability of data about impact is therefore crucial. This transparency that we've been talking about in this fantastic panel has to be mandated by governments. We have to shift to generally accepted impact principles. In my view, getting audited impact numbers will be mandated by some countries within the next 3 to 5 years. And that's when the average CEO who is remote from impact is going to wake up. And like those who were left behind by technology, those who don't move in the direction of impact and invest to improve their impact and change their policies will be overtaken by younger, disruptive firms.
Absolutely. And on what you said, BlackRock only in 2019 stopped supporting more than 2,000 CEOs for not taking this seriously, Ronnie. So it is exactly that. We could stay here forever listening to the three of you. It is really amazing to have you, but we need to be closing down. And to close down this groundbreaking session, I would like to ask each one of you to say to all entrepreneurs, business leaders, and maybe CEOs as well, in just one sentence, if you can, okay? What are the key factors to succeed and lead the way in a new capitalism 2.0 that drives genuine social progress, growth, and prosperity for all. Maybe we can start with Jose Maria and then Gonzalo, and we can close with Sir Ronnie's one sentence.
Well, first, I'd like to say that whoever is not assuming the responsibility in this brand new world, because this is uncharted territory, a new technological revolution, totally uncharted territory, whoever is, and some of the rules have not yet been written. So we need to apply our own remedy for our own vision for the future. So my point would be, this is not an add-on to your strategy. This is your strategy. This is the core of your strategy, because your business will only have value if it is sustainable. And it will be sustainable only if its impact is positive, and therefore it will have a big terminal value. So this is your business. This is core to your strategy, and therefore you should walk the talk. That would be my sentence.
Thank you. Gonzalo?
Well, thank you. I would say take it seriously. Time is now. And I mean, time is now to think about your impact. Take it seriously, think about it, what you do, measure or see how you can measure, if not all of that impact, a good part of that impact. And then third, you can start to manage it. But the time is now. And by the way, once you've done this, I fully agree with Jose Maria, share your expertise. We are all writing the rules. We need to learn from each other. This is not easy. We know the direction, but there's a whole world to conquer. So it's great to share views and gain benefits from the experience of each other.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Ronnie?
And Maria, I would say that like technology, impact is an opportunity. Take advantage of it.
Impact is indeed an opportunity to drive profit. And I would like to thank you very much, Gonzalo Gortázar, Jose Maria Álvarez Payete, Sir Ronald Cohen. You represent the leading change makers for a new era of capitalism, focused not only on minimizing harm, but on doing measurable good to every person, leaving no one behind, and also to our planet. Bravo, and all the very best to the three of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.